The courtroom was buzzing quietly, but not with anticipation for the trial. Everyone there knew the name. Nicolas Armand. Only son of Senator Richard Armand, the most influential politician in the state. Power. Privilege. Arrogance. He carried them like armor, as if the law could never touch him. He walked in slowly, head held high, shoulders back, eyes scanning the courtroom like a king surveying his kingdom. A smirk appeared on his lips as he saw the officers, the bailiffs, the audience, all waiting. And then he leaned over to a friend and whispered loud enough for the room to hear. "Do you know who my father is? This won't even be a trial." The room went silent. A collective shiver of anticipation passed through everyone, except for Judge Franko Carpio. Calmly, methodically, the judge removed his glasses. That he didn't look angry. He didn't look impressed. That he just looked at Nicholas, like a man who had seen entitlement 1,000 times before. And the courtroom held its breath. The clerk adjusted the microphone and began reading the charges: reckless driving in a residential zone, verbal harassment of a law enforcement officer, attempted intimidation, driving with an expired license, failure to comply with court summons. The words seemed ordinary, almost mundane, if it weren't for the man sitting in the defendant's chair. Officer Marcus, a seasoned officer with more than a decade on the force, stood to give his account. That he held himself with composure, but there was tension in his jaw, a silent warning to the young man who thought he was untouchable. Judge Carpio. "Officer, please tell us what happened." Officer Marcus. "Your Honor, on September 12th, I observed a silver Porsche traveling at 72 miles per hour in a 35 zone. I initiated a stop. When I approached, the defendant." He paused briefly, swallowing hard. This young man laughed, Mr. Armand did, and said, "Move aside. You know who my father is. You all work for us." Then he shoved my hand away. He claimed my job was on the line. And that my actions would be reported to his father's office. Gasps spread across the courtroom. The gallery murmured. Even the attorney tried to stifle a cough. Nicholas leaned back and smirked. Clearly, he thought it was a joke. Scene 2, Nicholas's arrogance. Judge Carpio's voice cut through the murmurs, calm, firm, deliberate. Judge Carpio. "Mr. Armand, do you wish to respond?" Nicholas, smirking. "I don't need to respond. My father will handle this. You can't touch me." Judge Carpio's eyes narrowed slightly. There was no anger, only focus. He addressed the courtroom in a low, measured tone. "Judge Carpio. This may be my courtroom, but right now, it is your future that is on trial. Every choice you've made up to this moment has led you here. And it will determine the path you walk out of this room. The law does not bend to privilege, Mr. Armand. Not here. Not now." Nicholas laughed, a short, dismissive snicker. "This is politics. You can't touch me. My father's name is enough." Judge Carpio tapped the gavel lightly. A subtle but unmistakable warning. The air in the courtroom changed. Tension replaced arrogance. Judge Carpio, calmly. "Power is not a shield. It is a responsibility. And responsibility cannot be delegated or ignored." Evidence and witness testimony. The prosecution began presenting the evidence. Dashcam footage showed the Porsche weaving dangerously down a residential street. Pedestrians had to jump back to avoid being struck. Neighbors appeared, recording in real time, shaking their heads at the recklessness. Officer Marcus took the stand. Every word was deliberate. Every gesture precise. Officer Marcus. "When I attempted to stop Mr. Armand, he attempted to flee. He refused to provide identification. When I tried to issue a citation, he tore the documents and threw them onto the street. He threatened me with his father's office. And he refused to appear on his court summons." Judge Carpio listened intently, occasionally nodding to the clerk to mark the testimony. He remained silent. But every eye in the room was locked on him, waiting for judgment, waiting for the inevitable. The turning point. Judge Carpio looked at Nicholas. For the first time, the smirk faltered. There was no mockery in the judge's voice. No dramatics. Just truth. Judge Caprio. Mr. Armand, do you see what you have done? You endangered lives. You attempted to manipulate authority. You destroyed legal documents. You refused to comply. And all of this because you believed your father's power was greater than the law itself. Nicholas hesitated. He opened his mouth but no words came. The courtroom was still. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Judge Carpio. You have two choices. You can leave this courtroom believing that privilege protects you, or you can take responsibility for your actions and begin the difficult process of becoming accountable. Your choice, Mr. Armand. Nicholas's hands clenched, but still, he said nothing. Verdict announcement. Judge Carpio stood slowly. He removed his glasses again. Calmly, meticulously, he began to outline the verdict. Judge Carpio. You will complete 180 hours of community service. Mandatory anger management sessions. Full letters of apology to Officer Marcus and the affected residents. Participation in a civic education program. Weekly reporting to this court. The courtroom murmured. Nicholas's lawyer stammered, attempting to intervene. Judge Carpio, firmly. This is not a punishment for revenge. This is a lesson in accountability. You will comply fully. Any attempt to evade responsibility will result in immediate incarceration and financial penalties. Mercy is conditional. Respect for the law is not optional. The beginning of accountability. The following Monday, Nicholas reported to his assigned community service site, the local Safe Streets Coalition, an organization dedicated to teaching road safety and civic responsibility. He arrived late, dressed casually, attempting to mask his discomfort with a cocky grin. Carmen, his supervisor, a composed woman in her 40s, greeted him with a clipboard and a firm look. Carmen. Mr. Armand, I trust you understand this is not optional. Your behavior has consequences, and you will complete every assigned task. No exceptions. Nicholas nodded, though his jaw clenched subtly. He spent the first hours picking up litter from crosswalks, helping paint warning signs, and recording short safety announcements for local students. Every task was meticulous, designed to teach him that actions have consequences and laws exist to protect people, not to be bent by influence. As he handed over his first report to Carmen, he mumbled under his breath. I've never done this kind of work before. Why do I have to? Carmen did not respond, she simply watched him complete the task correctly, ensuring he learned through experience. Reflections begin. Week 2 brought Nicholas to the civic ethics classroom. The instructor, a retired judge, began the session by asking. Instructor. What is public service, truly? Is it privilege or responsibility? Nicholas sat quietly, his arms crossed, eyes fixed on the floor. Instructor. When you hold power, whether inherited or earned, you have two choices, to uplift or to oppress. The law protects everyone equally, but respect is earned through action, not title. For the first time, Nicholas felt a pang of realization. His mind flashed back to Officer Marcus' bruised arm, the frightened pedestrians, the torn citation. All the arrogance, all the entitlement, suddenly felt hollow. Personal apologies. By week 3, Nicholas faced one of the most difficult tasks, delivering personal apology letters. First, to Officer Marcus. He approached quietly, handing the letter with trembling hands. Nicholas. Sir. I am truly sorry. I understand now that my actions endangered people and disrespected you as an officer. Officer Marcus read silently, then looked up, his expression neutral but composed. Officer Marcus. Words matter, Mr. Armand. Actions matter more. Let's see if your actions follow your apology. It stung Nicholas that forgiveness was not immediate. He realized respect must be earned, not demanded. Next, he visited Mr. and Mrs. Klein, neighbors affected by his reckless driving. He apologized for the fear he caused, the near accidents, the disrespect for community safety. Again, they listened quietly, accepting his words only because he showed humility in his tone, no excuses, no entitlement. Public service announcements. Nicholas then began working on 2 public service announcements, PSAs, required by the court. PSA 1, Respecting Public Office. Explaining why police, judges, and civic authorities exist. Encouraging compliance with the law. PSA 2, Entitlement versus Duty. Showing how privilege can blind people to the impact of their actions. Highlighting how accountability restores trust. The filming sessions were grueling. Nicholas fumbled lines at first, stumbled over words, and struggled with sincerity. But over time, his demeanor softened. He began speaking with genuine remorse and reflection, realizing that being powerful is not the same as being responsible. Community engagement. By week 6, Nicholas was actively helping organize voter registration drives and road safety workshops. A young teenager asked. Teenager. Why is driving responsibly so important? Nicholas knelt slightly to meet the student's eye. Nicholas. I know because I made a terrible mistake. I endangered people because I thought rules didn't apply to me. Responsibility protects everyone, not just yourself. The teenager nodded solemnly. Nicholas found himself genuinely wanting to teach, to guide, to prevent others from repeating his mistakes. For the first time, public service felt like duty, not punishment. Redemption through action. By the 8th week, Nicholas had spent hours cleaning streets, teaching classes, speaking in PSAs, and completing reflection exercises. He visited Mr. Klein's home again to check on his dog, the same dog he almost hit weeks earlier. They spoke for an hour. Damar. Klein shared the impact of responsible driving and civic care. Nicholas wrote in his journal later. I almost destroyed someone else's life for the sake of arrogance. I cannot undo that, but I can learn. I can change. Legal education and civic ethics. Nicholas attended the civic ethics program every week. Sessions included the responsibilities of power, the impact of privilege on society, accountability in leadership, public trust and integrity. Assignments required him to reflect in writing, 800 to 1,000 words, explaining what he learned. Excerpt from Nicholas's reflection. I believed my father's position made me untouchable. I was wrong. Democracy protects everyone equally. Privilege is not a shield, character is. I now understand that respect must be earned, not inherited. The writing, the classes, and the experiences slowly chipped away at his arrogance. His friends noticed the change. He was no longer dismissive or boastful. He began listening, asking questions, genuinely considering the perspectives of others. Final court review. 14 weeks later, Nicholas returned to Judge Franko Carpio's courtroom. No entourage. No designer suits. No smirk. He stood alone, ready to speak for himself. Judge Carpio. Mr. Armand, speak. Nicholas. I have completed everything the court required. The community service, the apology letters, the PSAs, the civic classes. I have reflected deeply on my actions. I understand now that privilege is not a shield. I am responsible for my actions and their consequences. I am no longer entitled, only accountable. A heavy silence filled the courtroom. Judge Carpio watched intently. Judge Carpio, softly. You asked if I knew who you were. I do. You are someone who made terrible choices, who used privilege to try to escape accountability. And now, you are someone taking responsibility, someone seeking redemption. Let this be the beginning of a lifetime of mindful choices. Nicholas bowed his head slightly, tears glimmered in his eyes. The weight of weeks, of accountability, of true learning, settled upon him. Final court remarks. The courtroom was silent as Judge Franko Carpio adjusted his glasses and looked at Nicholas Armand with a calm, piercing gaze. Judge Carpio. Mr. Armand, 14 weeks have passed. In that time, you have performed your service, faced the people you harmed, and reflected on your choices. You stand here today, not as the entitled son of a senator, but as a young man who has begun to understand accountability. He paused, letting his words sink in. Judge Carpio, continuing. The law is not an abstract concept. It is the framework that protects life, liberty, and dignity. You attempted to bend it for personal convenience. You attempted to use privilege as a weapon. But laws are stronger than influence. And today, your actions have met the consequences they demanded. The audience held its breath. Even Nicholas's attorney, who had often been flustered by the judge's calm authority, remained silent, absorbing every word. Judge Carpio tapped the gavel lightly. Judge Carpio. Therefore, the conditional penalties previously imposed are now reviewed, the 180 hours of community service are complete, the anger management program is complete, and the letters of apology have been delivered and accepted. You have submitted your reflections and participated fully in the civic ethics program. The state fine of $12,000 is hereby remitted. You will pay the remaining $3,000 today. Let this payment not be a burden, but a reminder. Consequences exist for every action, regardless of who you are. Above all, Mr. Armand, remember this: mercy is not a gift. It is an opportunity to grow. Accountability is not punishment. It is education. Let your actions from this day forward demonstrate that you have learned the difference between privilege and duty, between entitlement and responsibility. Nicholas's transformation revealed. Nicholas exhaled deeply, feeling the weight of weeks of service lift, but the lesson still firmly planted. He looked around the courtroom. Faces once wary or skeptical now held a quiet respect. He approached Officer Marcus. Nicholas. Sir. I can't undo the fear or harm I caused, but I promise my actions from now on will reflect the lesson I've learned. I want to use what I have to protect, not endanger. Officer Marcus nodded, his expression softening. Officer Marcus. Actions speak louder than words, Mr. Armand. Make sure they always do. Nicholas then turned to the Klein family, whose dog he had nearly endangered. Nicholas. I am sorry for what I did. You trusted me to follow the law. I failed. I will spend the rest of my life ensuring I honor that trust. Mrs. Klein placed a hand on her husband's arm. Mrs. Klein. We forgive you. Now show everyone else what respect looks like. Community impact. Months later, the community felt the ripple effects of Nicholas's transformation. The Safe Streets Coalition noted increased volunteer engagement from young adults inspired by his PSAs. Civic education workshops saw higher attendance, particularly among teenagers who heard his story firsthand. Local voters reported that seeing a privileged individual held accountable motivated them to participate more actively in their civic duties. Even those initially skeptical, who assumed he would return to entitlement, witnessed his dedication. Nicholas no longer sought attention or praise. He simply showed up, worked hard, and used his voice to educate, not intimidate. Judge Carpio's final wisdom. Judge Franko Carpio addressed the courtroom one last time, his voice calm, yet commanding attention. Judge Caprio. Remember this, everyone present: privilege does not exempt you from accountability. Influence does not protect you from consequences. Life is not a rehearsal. Every action, every choice, has a result. Justice is not vengeance. It is the opportunity to learn, to repair, to grow. Mr. Armand learned that. It is now your responsibility to ensure that lesson resonates in your own life. The law serves not to punish, but to illuminate the path to responsibility. It protects the innocent and teaches the powerful humility. Never forget, character is the measure of a person, not title, wealth, or family name. And in this courtroom, that principle always stands. The gavel struck one final time. The courtroom emptied slowly, leaving behind the echo of Judge Carpio's words. Nicholas walked out, head lowered, not in shame, but in understanding. He had faced the consequences, learned the lessons, and now carried the weight of responsibility willingly. What would you do if someone used their power to intimidate the law? Would you fight it, like Officer Marcus? Would you submit to it, like so many others? Or would you hold yourself accountable, even when it's difficult, even when no one is watching? Privilege can open doors. But only character ensures you walk through them honorably. Judge Franko Carpio reminded us all, justice is not just a system. It is a mirror. And today, one young man saw himself reflected clearly for the first time. Epilogue/Life after the case. 6 months later. Nicholas Armand was volunteering regularly in civic programs. His PSAs were aired in local schools and community centers. Officer Marcus received a formal commendation for handling the case with professionalism. The Klein family continued to share their story, highlighting accountability and community responsibility. Judge Franko Carpio returned to his chambers, reviewing cases with the same calm authority, confident that the lessons of responsibility had reached beyond the walls of his courtroom. Power is a test. Responsibility is the answer. Will you choose wisely,